Today, we discuss a global war on terror era classic that has garnered a cult following unlike any other, the Mk12 Mod0 Special Purpose Rifle. We pit an original factory PRI rifle upper for an accuracy challenge against a BCM reproduction. We also test our equipment with some of the most popular 75 to 77 grain ammunition, to include the venerable military-issued Black Hills Mk262 Mod1, IMI Razor Core, MagTech and Hornady Black. Finally, we test the OpSync or Allen Engineering suppressor for its effects on the weapon's platform's accuracy. So charge your glasses and strap in for this 9-hole review on the Mk12 Mod0. In the early 2000s, while soldiers and marines were still advancing through Iraqi streets with iron sights M16s, SOCOM had started developing a concept for a lightweight, modular, accurate, and nimble designated marksman system for the next generation's issue. The Mk12 system was built around the Black Hills Mk262 77 grain 5.56 NATO cartridge. The 77 grain projectile had a higher ballistic coefficient and outperformed other 5.56 cartridges in terminal ballistics and flight characteristics. The Mk12 SPR was initially designated as a special purpose receiver and to be only issued with the upper receiver. However, with a surplus of M16A1 lower receivers and buttstocks in inventory, Crane began to issue the Mk12 as a complete rifle with A1 lower halves. The Mod0 was most recognizable for its PRI carbon fiber free-floated handguard. The Mk12 Mod0 is far more rare in general service and closely associated with the US Army's 5th Special Forces Group. But the rifle is rare for a reason. Early adaptations for the rifle had interface issues between arms and PRI parts. PRI currently manufactures a Mk12 Mod0 complete rifle or upper receiver that is widely popular within military rifle reproduction enthusiasts. In 2012, BCM also released their copy of the Mod0 system without the arms rail on top. The BCM is deemed less desirable than the PRI variant to collectors and uses a 1:8 twist stainless barrel. Today we have a PRI Mk12 upper receiver on an A1 type lower that resembles an issued Mk12 Mod0 more closely with a swan sleeve, shooting against a BCM Mk12 Mod0 upper on a Colt M4 marked lower. The BCM lacks a swan sleeve to decrease unnecessary weight and uses a LaRue LT158 mount that adds 10 MOA for long-range shooting. Both rifles run identical Vortex 2.5x10x32 scopes to duplicate the functions of the issued Nightforce scope. For those who complain that we aren't using issued optics, we get it. We have Nightforce and US optics scopes on other rifles and appreciate quality optics. That said, the Vortex seen here is not the limiting factor for this setup to reach 800 yards. Both rifles also have match-grade triggers installed. All targets were shot at 100 yards. The rifles were alternated between the 9-round groups for barrel cooldown intervals, and the environmentals between the shot groups were entirely the same. So how did we do? With the IMI color box, the BCM won by a 4% smaller 9-shot group at 1.7 inches. The IMI brown box was a worse performing ammunition, and the PRI won out by a 15% smaller 9-shot group at 2.3 inches. MagTech yielded the best group of the day, with the BCM printing a 1.3 inch 9-shot group that was 48% smaller than the PRI's group. The Mk262 was a little disappointing, with a PRI barely winning out with a 1% smaller 9-shot group at 2.2 inches. In the past, we've seen the Black Hills 77 grain TMK target loads to compare much closer to the 1.2 MOA 9-shot group range. Finally, Hornady Black 75 grains was a win for the BCM with a 9-shot group that was 6% smaller at 1.98 inches. The BCM narrowly wins out at a 4% smaller average group size when compared to the PRI. Now we noticed that our group sizes seemed a little bit higher than what some people of the internet reported. To dispel any doubts and to learn about the effects of the suppressor, we took the BCM back to the range and tested for a point of impact shift, with or without the suppressor. It was a different day, I was well rested, and I shot from a shaded position. One of the first things anyone would notice while shooting the AEM5 is how quiet it is. The OpSync suppressor was a major design adaptation to the Mk12 system. The break in color on the Mk12 is one of the most distinctive features that separates a rifle from the rest. Years after OpSync went out of business, Ron Allen from Allen Engineering continued the manufacturing of the AEM5 suppressor. This suppressor is known for its zero point of impact shift, meaning the rifle will impact on the same location whether suppressed or unsuppressed. The results were staggering. Indeed, there was no point of impact shift. The Black Hills Mk262 group size was 37% smaller when suppressed at 1.7 inches. The MagTech's group sizes were actually almost exactly the same at 1.3 inches. The IMI brown box was just as horrid as the first test, but the suppressor did manage to decrease the 9-hole group size by 51% and ended up at 1.9 inches. The IMI color box had a 37% group size reduction from the suppressor, yielding the tightest 9-hole group of all of the tests at 1.28 inches, which most of the rounds actually fall into a 0.9-inch group. Hornady Black also benefited from a 22% group size reduction with a suppressor attached, yielding a 1.62-inch group. When comparing the results between the 2 days, there was less than a 4% variance between the unsuppressed BCM uppers group sizes, suggesting that both the shooter and the equipment were consistently performing. When we took the BCM Mk12 Mod0 to the practical accuracy range, we were even able to hit 800-yard head-sized targets in strong winds.
Impact.
Despite the projectiles lacking energy, the 77-grain 5.56 bullet still retains about the same energy as a light .38 Special would have at a point-blank range. We also observed that the bullet drop out to 600 yards away was very comparable to a 175-grain 7.62 by 51 projectile, although the wind drift was significantly more. One problem, however, is that BCM cut the barrel dimensions incorrectly. Since the original step for the BCM suppressor collar was cut too shallow, the suppressor was not locking in tight in the recommended 6 to 8 turns, but rather 4 turns. I had to work with Allen Engineering directly to get a custom barrel collar made for the suppressor to time correctly. The PRI uses the original Douglas barrel and has no such issues. Now that was a lot of data. Let's try to break it down for a few conclusion points. 1. The BCM handedly beat the PRI in the accuracy department when fed with MagTech. The tightest group that the PRI was able to obtain was a 1.769-inch group with IMI color box, 35% larger than the BCM's unsuppressed with MagTech at 1.316 inches. 2. The AEM5 suppressor gave us a 30% decrease in average group sizes, with no point of impact shift. An interesting observation was how the suppressor changed the casing ejection pattern, and that the PRI gasbuster charging handle on the rifle worked flawlessly to vent excess gases away from the shooter when suppressed. In fact, rounds in the magazine turned from this into this. That's from all that back pressure. Unsuppressed, and these are suppressed. You see the difference? A little sooty. 3. MagTech 77-grain ammunition was the most consistently delivering accurate ammunition, with an average between all tests at 1.47 inches. It yielded an 11 to 65% decrease in average group sizes when compared to any of the other ammunitions tested. 4. While the IMI color box yielded the tightest grouping while suppressed, we cannot easily recommend it. The IMI color box gave us a 50% tighter group size than the brown box ammunition, as there is too much variance between the different lots.
Targets!
At the end, the Knight's Armament Mk12 Mod1 ultimately became the issued rifle, as Knight's parts did not have fitment issues. The Mk12 Mod1 even turned into a general issued rifle for Marines.
Hit him. Got him. He's still up. Tango's down.
To some collectors, the BCM would never even be a choice of purchase because it does not use all of the original PRI parts. For us, we are perfectly happy with the sound of a struck steel plate at long distances under the puff of an efficiently suppressed rifle. We'd love to hear your thoughts about our test. Feel free to send us pictures of your Mk12 for us to repost on our Facebook page. We also encourage you to send us your 9-hole groups shot at 100 yards as a comparison between our variants and yours. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you on the range.
Neutralized.
716, this is Steel Knight 6, 4 Vic, 8 packs, Redcon 1, green to green, how copy, over?
Steel Knight 6, this is 716, roger, over. 16, Steel Knight 1, 1 pack, green, green, over. This is 716, roger, over. 16, Steel Knight 2, 1 Victor, 2 packs, Redcon 1, over.